Now, how far do we want to push the Santa example? There are no great world-shaking truths or consequences that are online in this case here, but if we take Santa Claus and the dynamic that's working there as a smaller scale childlike example and blow it up to an adult level concern, what happens when we get into our teen years, for example, and we're starting to be more cognitively alert, and we start talking to other people who start planting doubts in our mind about whether God really exists, right? And there are all kinds of reasonable questions and objections that can be planted in our minds about God. What goes on in the vast majority of people's minds when they confront this issue of whether God really exists or not? What the pragmatists will say is, for the vast majority of people, what actually happens is a subjective commitment, right? It's a desire that drives the decision making in this case. People put to themselves, is it such that I want to live a life such that God and religion is a part of my life, and if I feel a deeply felt need to have God as part of my life, then that is the kind of commitment that I am going to make. If on the other hand, we do know there are some people who fall into this category, when they confront that set of issues, they don't feel a deep need to have religion or God in their lives, and so they then make a different kind of commitment. They come to believe different truths, they have different world views, and that's perfectly fine. And we're comfortable with that in the 20th century. We're comfortable with that in the 21st century. You have your truth, I will have my truth, and we'll have a live and let live tolerant kind of approach to religion. And it's a good thing, right, that we have this live and let live approach to religion in the 21st century because we know the history of religion when the vast majority of people on religious matters believe that there is such a thing as objective truth, and they believe that there is such a thing as higher eternal truths, and that it's important for the salvation of my soul that you believe exactly what I believe and that you act the way that I want you to believe, and you're doing the same sort of thing to me as well. Now, what the pragmatists will also point out is that necessarily when it comes to matters of religion, we have to decide on subjectivist grounds because there is no objective evidence forthcoming one way or the other. And as evidence of that, the pragmatists will say, as William James did, we've been arguing about these issues for 2,500 years, for 3,000 years, for as long as there have been human beings who have had any sort of religious beliefs as well. And it's the exact same arguments generation after generation. They get kicked around back and forth. There is no proof of the existence of God. There's not at this point likely to be any proof that is forthcoming, but equally so, there's no knockdown proof against the existence of God. So again, we're in a position of epistemological agnosticism, or we're in a position of having partial knowledge. There isn't going to be objective knowledge forthcoming one way or the other. And if objectivity can't pronounce on this important matter of religion, then we're falling back to a state of subjectivity, and it's then necessarily going to be a subjective desire that's going to lead to a commitment one way or the other. All right, so that then folds in all of the major pragmatic themes, right? Knowledge is going to be subjective, right? Truth is going to be subjective. What works is going to be the decisive criterion here, but what works for some people is not necessarily what's going to work for other people. So we have the relativity, and then also if we have the relativity and the subjectivity and we're comfortable with that, then socially, right, we can work out a tolerant and live and let live atmosphere with respect to religion, and that's just fine.